Good evening, White City Wildcats. This is Mrs. Roberts. Tonight I would like to read you a story called So Small. It's by Ayn Rand and Fyodor Rojankovsky. It's one of my favorite stories, so I hope you enjoy it. So Small. Once, a mother and father mouse who lived in the wall of a nice country house had a litter of 6 little mice. Five were the size that mice should be, but the 6th was so small that it was hard to realize he was a mouse at all. "He's just eyes and ears," cried the father. "He has hardly any tail," wailed the mother. The 5 grew and grew. The 6th did too, but such a little mouse, there still wasn't much mouse to see. "We have to admit he will always be small," the parents sighed and decided to call him Little Bit. Now the 5 were very good and always behaved as they should. They stayed near home and played and were glad with whatever they had for supper. But Little Bit had already begun to sit and think of naughty things to do. "Your father wants to speak to you," the mother said one day, "and most of all to Little Bit because he is so small." "Now the world of a mouse is very hard," the father said sternly. "We only get the crumbs of bread and must watch out for traps and brooms and owls, or taking naps wherever pussycats may prowl." "We will take care," said the 5, but Little Bit, who was very nimble, decided to dive inside a thimble, and no one was sure he had even heard his father's warning word. Probably not, because the next day when it was hot, Little Bit went out to sleep in the shadow of a clover leaf and woke up from a lovely dream of peanuts, cake, and green ice cream, when a big cat howled in glee. "What is this tiny thing I see?" Little Bit, who was very proud, shouted, "I'm a mouse, not a thing," so loud that the cat scurried back to the house. But at night, when Little Bit came home to boast, he only got dry toast for supper. "I may be small," thought Little Bit, "but I'll show them all. It's better to be brave than never misbehave." Early the next morning, Mother Mouse gave warning to keep away from the cook, but Little Bit just had to have a look. And as soon as he was able, he sneaked out and climbed the kitchen table. Only the cook was nowhere to be found when Little Bit peeped around. He was about to go when he knocked over a cup that was full to the brim and decided instead to go for a swim in a pool of milk, and then thought what fun to leap onto this heap of flour. But the flour stuck like glue, as flour will do with milk. Poor Little Bit. He nearly had a fit of terror. He kicked his tiny feet and beat his tiny paws, but all he did was roll and roll till he grew as big as a mixing bowl. He looked like a live ball of batter to the cook, who came crying, "Whatever's the matter with the cake I was going to make?" Oh dear, thought Little Bit. I don't want to be baked. So he kicked and flounced and bounced so hard that the cook screamed with fright and to Little Bit's delight ran away. Little Bit stopped kicking his feet and began to eat so fast that at last he got out and hid in a laundry sack before the cook came back to the room waving a big yellow broom. That night, Mother Mouse had said she hadn't known how fat her Little Bit had grown. Little Bit was glad for once he wasn't small, but he didn't like at all the medicine he had to take to cure his stomach ache. Even so, that night in bed, he thought what fun it was to do as he had done, and how brave it was still better, how it was still better to be brave than to never misbehave. Every day, when Little Bit played with his sisters and brothers, each one tried to do more than the others. They raced up walls and curled into balls to roll down the cellar stairs. I can do most, boasted Little Bit. I can climb a daisy like a tree, you see? But so can we, laughed the five. I can hop a raindrop, Little Bit said. But we can jump 6 in a row and know how to leap a pile of sticks, teased the five. So can I, cried Little Bit. But when he tried, he found the pile was much too high. Poor Little Bit, said the five. There are lots of things you can never do because you are too small. This made Little Bit so cross that he tossed his tiny head and said, I may be small, but I'm braver than you all. I'm not afraid of a cook with a broom or a prowling cat, or even more than that, I'm not afraid of an owl. Before the five could reply or even say goodbye, Little Bit ran as fast as he could into a big dark wood. Inside the forest, it was almost like night, and Little Bit nearly swooned with fright when he bumped plunk into the trunk of a tree and saw an upside-down stump hump up like the head of a ram. Oh dear, thought Little Bit aloud. I mustn't forget how brave I am. Who are you to be so brave? Cooed a voice so close to his ear that Little Bit leaped right off the ground in fear. A frog, perhaps? Said the owl, peering closer. Or maybe a miniature dog? Poor Little Bit. He couldn't say a thing or even bring himself to look at those 2 enormous eyes. Why, it's a mouse, said the owl, pretending to be surprised. Just step up here, my dear, and I'll give you something to make you wise. But Little Bit knew that this was a trick, and he had to do something quick, or there wouldn't be a Little Bit anymore. Just then, he spied an empty acorn shell. Like a flash, he dashed inside to hide, and the owl, who couldn't see very well, was awfully mad because he couldn't tell where Little Bit had gone. Where are you, pray? Coaxed the owl. I'm always very nice to mice. But Little Bit didn't stay to listen. He just quickly rolled away, and he decided as he rolled It was fine to be bold and brave, but sometimes better to do as you're told and not always misbehave. But most of all, Little Bit was very glad that he was small enough to fit an acorn shell. So small. Thank you for listening to my story tonight. Stay tuned for tomorrow night. There will be another story. Enjoy your time off and be safe. We're missing you very much. Bye.